very good evening and welcome. This is News First Prime Time News here on TV1. For the News First team, I am Niger. Today is the 25th of September 2023.
I'm Mariam Gunavijaya. First up is a look at your headlines.
Take legal action if there are issues. People will decide on politicians who want the residences of officials set on fire. Strong statements from Central Bank Governor. SJB-led government will review the IMF agreement. Sajid Premadasa tells IMF delegates. University academic and non-academic staff join forces. Postal workers take to the streets in protest. David Cameron to visit Dubai and Abu Dhabi for Port City rebranding. UNP says President's overseas visits were successful and results will appear in the future. Sri Lanka women settle for silver at the Asian Games Women's Cricket Tournament as India wins gold.
Your top story for tonight that also made it onto your headlines. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says that if the Central Bank of Sri Lanka or the Finance Ministry has violated the Constitution, the most appropriate measure would be to take the matter to court.
He says that the people must decide on the politicians who, instead of taking such a matter to court, continue to make statements calling to cause damages to the residences of the officials.
The latest opinion in society is that the Finance Ministry and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka have violated the Constitution. If the Finance Ministry and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka have violated the Constitution, any official has a right to take legal action against such a person as per the Constitution. I will support such moves as the Governor of the Central Bank. If the former President, former Finance Minister, former officials or present officials had violated the Constitution, in the default announcement, necessary legal action must be taken and a proper investigation must be carried out. The Central Bank and the Finance Minister will extend its fullest support for it.
The Central Bank Governor was speaking at the event organised to launch the latest book penned by journalist Shyam Nuwan Ganewatta. The book is titled Arthika Ghatanaya, loosely translated to The Assassination of the Economy.
Is it correct for the judiciary to consider all the facts before the Parliament and the Executive grant approval at a time when petitions have been filed with the Supreme Court and time given for parties to make their submissions? Or should there be amendments? We witnessed several changes being made by the Central Bank Act. What should not be done is to secure approval via violence by taking the law into one's own hands. None of us approved it. When a temporary default was announced, there was an opinion that it was the root cause for the struggle and for the House of Lawmakers to be set on fire. That can be debated. However, some public officials had noted that the houses of government officials should be set on fire instead of their residences. What is the message that is given? As public representatives going to solve it via violence? I think the people will have to decide on such representatives in the future.
In the meantime, opposition groups met with the IMF delegation that is in the country for the first review of the extended fund facility arrangement for Sri Lanka.
The IMF delegation is led by Peter Brewer, Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, and they met with the opposition alliance at the office of the opposition leader in Colombo. The agreements the government had reached with the IMF were discussed at length. The opposition groups had raised their concerns with the IMF over the impact the domestic debt restructuring program has on the employees' provident fund. The office of the opposition leader said that opposition leader Sajid Premadasa had informed the IMF delegation that under its government the agreement would be reviewed and a more people-friendly agreement would be reached to focus on nation-building strategies.
Another issue that we discussed was what is called the diagnostic study. They did a governance diagnostic study, and it says in September the report is due. Now, if they sign the agreement to renew or rather to get the second tranche tomorrow, which means they would have done it before the report on governance, which looked at corruption issues, looked at issues of bad governance being released and debated in Parliament and by the public. So therefore, the question was, isn't there a problem of the chronological order of how this is happening? Shouldn't we first discuss the issues that you raised earlier regarding corruption vulnerabilities and then look at the recommendations given therein and ensuring the government was actually going to do what is in the report and then, going ahead with the second tranche? Now it is the other way around. So I basically told Mr. Brewer, Peter, look, IMF also needs to walk the talk, right? So you can't just say, look, harp about them taking action to reduce and eliminate corruption, whereas the report that is available, which is not yet made public, has been, I don't know where it is. They said by the end of this month it will be published. So we had quite a discussion on that.
The IMF delegation will meet with President Ranil Wickremesinghe tomorrow. The state finance ministers commented on the matter.
Because we did not utilize this properly on 16 previous occasions, we got stuck this time around. We are also discussing areas of concern with them. The next 2 weeks will be decisive for Sri Lanka. We will be facing the first IMF review and we will be discussing the conditions that we have met and on what matters we need to improve. We will also be discussing the input from the civil groups as well. First, we will successfully complete the review and then obtain the second tranche of funds. Then, we will obtain the assistance from other multilateral agencies so that investor confidence will be built on Sri Lanka, and thereafter, we will step into a year with long-term economic growth.
The IMF delegation met with a group of professionals this evening. The group comprised of members from the GMOA, Electricity Board Engineers Union, FUTA and other professionals trade unions.
Professionals brought the unjust tax regime to the attention of the visiting IMF delegation earlier today. They expressed these remarks during a meeting with the IMF delegation this evening. The group comprised of members from the GMOA, Electricity Board's Engineers Union, FUTA and other professionals trade unions.
The goal of the IMF team is to increase the government revenue via taxes. Therefore, IMF has not in any way said from which professional this must be taken from. The decisions to be taken regarding this is with the government. This is very clear. Therefore, we say not to put this on the IMF and make the decisions that are needed. Stop protecting your henchmen and the wealthy. Charge taxes from them. Do not put the entire weight of the taxes that are to be collected on the professionals. Bring clear solutions to this. That is all we ask.
Academic and non-academic staff trade unions at universities protested opposite the University Grants Commission in Colombo.
The Federation of University Teachers Association, the Inter-University Services Trade Union and the University Executive Officers Association protested opposite the University Grants Commission. They were voicing their protest against the attempt to privatize public universities, the new tax regime, the rising cost of living and related issues. Sri Lanka police and the riot police were also stationed close to the UGC in Colombo.
The government must refrain from interfering with the education system and the public university system. We will bring the student movement here in the future. In addition to that, we will bring all the trade unions together. Furthermore, we will bring together all parents who show an interest in their children's future and their education. We will force the government to its knees. We will not allow anyone to mess with the public education system. There is an exodus of intellectuals to the country and the students cannot engage in their studies. In this backdrop, the government is trying to bring down the university system. We will fight against this. We will bring everyone together for this cause.
Right now, we consider it our moral obligation to unite the people and tell this government that they have absolutely no moral right to engage in administration of this country without a mandate. This government has absolutely undermined the academic community. The university sector has been undermined, and the men and women with the highest qualifications are leaving the country because they are no longer in a position to remain in this country, and that is brain drain. The taxes that have been imposed are arbitrary taxes by a government that rules this country arbitrary manner in every single sector. This government has totally failed. Undermining the universities means undermining the entire nation. Mr. Wickramasinghe, you have no moral right, means you have no mandate to be in the presidency. You are a man who has been totally rejected by the people, and for education we need a man with a proper understanding of intellectual matters and also matters confronting the entire university system.
The Ranil Wickramasinghe Rajapaksa government is simply implementing the agenda of the IMF and is drafting plans to sell the entire education and the university system. This government has a very short term. If they are trying to impose more taxes and drive the universities to the brink of destruction, we as the Federation of University Teachers Associations will not allow that. We will bring together all communities against this.
The group protested for around 2 hours and then dispersed. Postal workers in several areas protested during their lunch break today, citing several issues, including not receiving a salary that is sufficient for the cost of living and recruitments being halted.
The main protest of the protest campaign, organized by the Postal Trade Union Collective, was held at the Central Mail Exchange. They demanded a cost of living expense of 20,000 rupees.
There should be around 5,200, but there is a shortage of 1,700, so public services cannot operate. For many years, state sector employees have not received an increased allowance. A 20,000 rupee cost of living allowance should be given to the employees who are severely burdened financially. The administration and the political authority have let these go astray by neglecting promotions and recruitments. Solutions must be provided promptly.
Postal workers at the Kandy post office also protested opposite the post office.
The living standards of working masses have dropped. Education and healthcare sectors have collapsed. The country's authorities should step down if they cannot improve the living standards of the working masses.
Postal workers protesting opposite the Anuradhapura post office said, while the prices of commodities including electricity and water tariffs are increasing, it is a serious issue that salaries are not being increased. This was the postal workers' protest held in Galle.
Circulars have been issued to recruit Grama Seva officers and officers to the Department of Railways and the Department of Health. No circular was issued regarding recruitments for the Postal Department. This government is working to destroy the postal service.
Postal workers protested during the lunch break in many areas, including the northern and the eastern provinces.
President Ranil Wickramasinghe is expected to attend the Berlin Global Dialogue.
Berlin Global Dialogue is a new international forum that unites leaders from business and policy to find joint solutions for a global economy in transition. The Berlin Global Dialogue is excited to host visionary business and policy leaders at the inaugural forum, and President Ranil Wickramasinghe is listed as one of the participants. The inaugural summit will take place in Berlin from the 28th to the 29th of September. The conference is initiated by ESMT, one of Europe's 10 leading business schools, and will take place at its campus. The Press and Information Office of the Federal Government of Germany reported that German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will meet with President Ranil Wickramasinghe on the sidelines of the Berlin Global Dialogue.
Two senior members of the United National Party expressed views regarding the progress of the president's overseas visit.
We
saw that the opposition party had thrown certain accusations against the president. He is not like any other leader. He participated in many events within just 3 days. Not only did he speak about Sri Lanka, but also on islands in the Indian Ocean as well. He also expressed views and discussed about global affairs. He received good responses from leaders and other nations in this regard as well. Therefore, I believe that he was able to instill a certain reassurance within those leaders regarding Sri Lanka. I believe his 3-day tour will result in Sri Lanka receiving more international assistance.
සංචාරයෙන් පස්සේ ලංකාවට මීට වඩා ජාත්‍යන්තර වශයෙන් පිට ආධාර ලබා ගන්නට පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරනවා.
ජනාධිපතිවරයාගේ මේ සංචාරයට රෝහිත අබේගුණවර්ධන ඒ වගේම මහින්දානන්ද අලුත්ගමගේ සහ අලිසබ්‍රිය අමාත්‍යවරයාගේ පුත්‍රයා සහභාගීව සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජාතික ජනබලවේගය තැන් තැන්වල විවේචනය කරනවා අපි දැක්කා. ඒ සම්බන්ධව ඔබතුමාගේ අදහස්.
නෑ ඒ ගැන මම හිතන්නේ අලිසබ්‍රිය අමාත්‍යතුමා ප්‍රකාශයක් කළා තිබ්බා.
I believe Minister Ali Sabri had issued a clarification on the matter. As far as I know, his son is engaged in studies in the USA. That may be why he joined his father, but he did not join any of the president's meetings in an official capacity. According to my knowledge, his son's attendance did not cost even a cent to the government.
මගේ පුතා එතනට එකතු වුණා කියලා.
අපි දැක්කා පසුගිය දවස්වල කියුබානු සමුළුවට ගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා සහභාගී වුණාම විශේෂයෙන් කියුබානු සමුළුව කියන්නේ චීනෙත්.
The president attended a G77 summit in Cuba. We know that the G77 summit was headed by China. During the official portrait of world leaders, he had been called to the center. Usually during such a portrait, it is either the most influential leader or the one with the most experience who occupies that space. The entire world has accepted that he is a leader with vast experience. It has created the headway for the world to support Sri Lanka.
ඒ අවශ්‍ය සහාය ලබා දෙන්න දෙපාසා හැදලා තියෙනවා.
News first with the people.
Parliamentarian Johnston Fernando alleged that it is the aides of Anrukumara Disanayaka who are insulting the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna on social media. He made these remarks speaking to the media yesterday.
In response, leader of the Jatika Jana Balavegi, Anrukumara Disanayaka, speaking in Uva Parnagama yesterday, said that false accusations are thrown at them when they stand with the people.
We know that when our meetings are live streamed, most of the comments have asked us to rest in peace. Yesterday, the father-in-law of one of our state ministers was killed. People should wish for him to rest in peace. Instead, the comments on this post of his death read that he deserved it. These are Andrew Kumara's lackeys. We do not celebrate when someone dies, be it a man or an animal. But when D.V. Chanaka's father-in-law was killed, Anura's bloodthirsty aides do not wish for him to rest in peace. Therefore, we are not surprised. Anger and hatred runs in their blood. We cannot change those genes. Therefore, you need to be smart. Many quarters are slinging mud at the JJB at present. What does society despise the most at present? If someone asks why our economy collapsed, the most common answer would be corruption in this country. When the Pandora Papers were released, a group of Sri Lankans, including Nirupama Rajapaksa, were in it. The investigation unit of ABC Australia compiled a documentary and revealed that an Australian corporation had paid commissions to purchase their equipment for the Hambantota Hospital. England, America and France conducted an investigation on the French Airbus Corporation and unearthed that a scam had occurred when Sri Lanka purchased airlines. The New York Times reported that Mahinda Rajapaksa was paid by Chinese corporations. If you go on Google and type Ranil Wickremesinghe Central Bank, you will see who is really responsible for the central bank scam. The people of this country expect a political system that punishes corruption and eradicates it. Now they are attempting to draw parallels between us and them and claim that we are also corrupt. They claim we have houses in Ireland. Bimal Ratnaik apparently owns BMWs and that we have stashed money in an island. Their parties have already been branded as corrupt by the people. Now they are attempting to portray the JJB as corrupt too. That is why they are slinging mud at us. But the people's trust in us has been built to the point where they don't believe such insults.
ඒ සියලු අවලාද මේ රටේ පොදු ජනයා විශ්වාස නොකරන තරමට ජාතික ජන බලවේගය කෙරෙහි විශ්වාසය ගොඩනැගිලා ඉවරයි.
Leader of
Media.
Parliamentarian Professor Channa Jayasumanas spoke on impending elections during a meeting of the Freedom People's Congress in Matara yesterday.
ගිය සතියේ ඉතර වෙනකම්ම තිබුණේ ජනාධිපතිවරණය තමයි මුලින් එන්නේ කියලා. දැන් ටික ටික පොඩ්ඩක් නිකන් එනවා මහමැතිවරණයක් මුලින් එයිද දන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. දැන් අපිටත් පොඩි සැකයක් තියෙනවා මොකක්ද ඉස්සෙල්ලා එන්නේ කියලා. දැන් අපේක්ෂක ගොඩක් ඉන්නවා. ප්‍රධාන කීප දෙනෙක්
Up until last week, it was the presidential election that was to be held first. Now there are hints of a general election being held first. This has raised suspicions over which election would come first. There are many candidates now. We can see several obvious ones. It seems like President Wickremesinghe will contest. The opposition leader Sajith Premadasa will contest. There is rumour that businessman Dhammika Perera will contest from the SLPP. Anukumar Dissanayake might contest from the Compass, that is the JJB. There are talks that the owner of Derana, Dilip Jayavira, who recently formed a party, might also contest. There are also rumours that the former governor of the Eastern Province, Anuradha Yahampath, contesting, who will represent factions promoting national ideologies. There are at least 6. We also saw Maithripala Sirisena hinting at it. We are being asked what our plan is. If we jump the gun, we might regret it in a few weeks. We will analyse all these developments because our aim is to do good for the country.
දැන් එකපාරට කියන්න ගියොත් සමහර විට තව සති 5කින් හිතනොත් එහෙම අපරාධ ඉක්මන් වුණේ තව පොඩක් හිටියනම් හොඳයි කියලා. අපි මේ සියලු දේවල් පිළිබඳව
The Inter-University Students' Federation says that it would resort to joint action against the online safety bill and the anti-terrorism bill.
The Inter-University Students' Federation engaged in talks with trade unions, mass organizations and civil movements.
ජනතාව මත පීඩනය මුදාහැරීමත් සමගම ඊට ජනතාවගෙන් ඇතිවිය හැකි ප්‍රතිරෝධය මැඩලන්න තමයි මෙන්න මෙවැනි මර්ධනීය අනබන.
The government requires such suppressive laws in order to crack down on the dissent that arises when the people are burdened. That is why they are trying to prevent the expression of views by the media or social media and also prevent the expression of views on the streets.
මහපාරේ හෝ නැත්නම් මාධ්‍යක එහෙම නැත්නම් සමාජ මාධ්‍යක හෝ අදහස් දැක්විය නොහැකි වෙන ආකාරයෙන් මෙන්න මේ විදිහට මර්ධනීය අනපනක් ගේන්නේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට සම්මත කරන්නවත් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ කාටවත් අයිතියක්
If this is moved to parliament, it should not be approved. We are against it. There are those who would try to say that they voted against it by remaining silent. The parliament must strongly oppose this. The public's views on dissent are not false statements and are not acts of terror.
ජනතාවගෙන් නැගෙන විරෝධය අසත්‍ය ප්‍රකාශයක් නෙවෙයි ත්‍රස්තවාදයක් නෙවෙයි.
සියලු බලවේග එකට
All forces will come together to force the 2 bills moved by the Ranil Rajapaksa government to be withdrawn. We believe the Bar Association of Sri Lanka shares the same position.
Former senior DIG Lalit Jayasinghe was sentenced to 5 years in prison by the Ratnapura High Court. He was charged with interfering with the police investigations over the shooting in Kahawat in 2015, which led to the death of one person and injured several others.
The former senior DIG was charged with interfering with the police process to prevent the arrest of then Deputy Minister Premalal Jayasekara, who was suspected of the crime at the time. After examining the charges against the former senior police officer, the Ratnapura High Court sentenced him to 5 years in prison. In addition, he was fined 20,000 rupees.
The rebranding of the Colombo Port City will take place in Abu Dhabi and Dubai.
State Minister for Investment Promotion Dilu Mamunagama says that the Colombo Port City will be introduced to investors in Abu Dhabi and Dubai tomorrow. This will be headed by the former Prime Minister of UK, David Cameron.
හිටපු අගමැති ඩේවිඩ් කැමරන් මැතිතුමාගේ ප්‍රධානත්වයෙන් උදේවරුේ අබුඩාබි වලත් හවස ඩුබායි.
The former minister of the UK, David Cameron, has hosted 2 events already, one in the morning in Abu Dhabi and the other in the evening in Dubai. We hope to launch our program tomorrow. Recently, the necessary legislation was passed in the parliament. An investor can now visit Sri Lanka and invest in the port city.
ගැසටුත් සම්මත වුණා. දැන් ආයෝජකයෙකුට ඇවිල්ලා වරාය නගරේ වැඩ පටන් ගන්න පුළුවන් තත්ත්වයේ නීති රාමු සකස් කරලා තියෙනවා.
A police manhunt is underway for 2 male Sri Lankan suspects over their alleged involvement in the murders of 3 of their fellow countrymen at a shop house on Perhentian Street in Lower Covil village, Sentul.
Kuala Lumpur Police Chief Datuk Alaudu Abdul Majid said both suspects were staying at a married couple's place on the 2nd floor of the shop house before the murder occurred. The police found the bodies of 3 men piled on top of each other at the couple's home with their hands tied and their heads covered with plastic bags. Two victims were tenants renting a room within the premises, while the third victim was the couple's son. Their ages ranged from their 20s to 40s. The neighbours reported the murders to the police after hearing shouts resembling a fight coming from the tenants' unit. The 40-year-old couple and their son had known the suspects, who are supposedly from Klang, for 6 months, and they stayed at their house for 2 days. The police believe that the two suspects planned the murders, and the motive behind the altercation is still under investigation. The married couple have been remanded for 7 days to assist in the investigation.
The Shipping Corporation of India is to begin high-speed passenger ferry services from Nagapattinam in Tamil Nadu to Kankasanthurei in Sri Lanka.
The ferry service from Nagapattinam, Tamil Nadu to Kankasanthurei, Sri Lanka is likely to commence operations from the first week of October this year. Sources in the Shipping Corporation of India told Indian media that the high-speed ferry service will cover 60 nautical miles distance and commence operations from Nagapattinam port. Tamil Nadu Maritime Board and the Union Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways are joining hands to execute the project. A passenger terminal will soon be set up at the Nagapattinam port.
Tomorrow is a much-awaited day for the Velgala Vidyalaya in Niger, Ibbagamuwa.
Velgala Vidyalaya in Niger, Ibbagamuwa, a school of around 360 students, is faced with a major problem: thirst. Drinking water for the schools is obtained from a public well in the village, but the water is not suitable for drinking. The condition of the village is similar to the school. Even though many people buy water from trucks that often come by, not everyone can afford it. To solve this problem, Government will install an RO plant at the Velgala Vidyalaya tomorrow. The water filtration unit is being installed with the expertise of the National Kidney Disease Monitoring and Research Unit of the Ministry of Health, along with the technical support of the Sri Lanka Navy. The financial support for the project is provided by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. The thirst of the children and villagers of Velgala Vidyalaya will be quenched tomorrow. Government for the people, by the people.
The 5th Asia-Pacific Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities, the largest regional environmental event in the Asia-Pacific region, will convene in Colombo from the 3rd to the 6th of October. A media briefing took place to raise awareness on this forum.
Sri Lanka will host the 5th Asia-Pacific Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities in Colombo from the 3rd of October to the 6th of October. This is the largest regional environmental event in the Asia-Pacific region. Minister of Environment Nazir Ahmed announced that this significant international event will witness the participation of 41 member countries of UNEP Asia-Pacific, with 25 countries and 16 ministers already confirming their attendance so far.
We expect a total number of 300 plus foreign delegates and 100 plus professionals and the environmental activists and the stakeholders from Sri Lanka also. The objective of this ministerial forum is to provide the regional inputs to the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, that is to be held in Nairobi from 24th February to March 1st, 2024. His Excellency, the President Ranil Wickremesinghe, to declare open the Ministerial Forum on 5th October and the chairmanship of this Ministerial Forum to be handed over to Sri Lanka at that event. The Climate Justice Forum, something new that Sri Lanka is going to propose, will address the issue of debt burden as against the climate vulnerability of the climate vulnerable and developing countries. Sri Lanka will spearhead the session.
This forum comes as part of the ongoing efforts to address the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution, with a focus on sustainable multilateral actions.
When you take climate action, there are three components. One is mitigation, the other is adaptation, and then third is handling the loss and damages. So, of course, for a country like Sri Lanka, where we been, at the receiving end of impact of climate change, our forte is basically adaptation. That is as to how we adapt. But then sometimes we tend to forget the strength, Sri Lanka's strength in mitigation. Now, we don't produce even 5 gigawatts in Sri Lanka in energy, but they have studied and sort of established the fact that only through wind power we can go up to 20 gigawatts on land, onshore, offshore. So that's, if we somehow manage to get investments and somehow invest in our solar, wind, hydro, reaching net zero is not going to be a problem, and also we will have surplus, and that's income for the country. So it's very difficult, but then that's the way forward for Sri Lanka.
The event will provide a platform for governments, intergovernmental organizations and stakeholders to discuss and prioritize environmental issues in the Asia-Pacific region, contributing to the global effort to combat these challenges.
Tropical Tidecraft, a beach cleanup and tree planting project got underway at the Velgala Mount Lavinia beach yesterday.
A beach cleanup and tree planting project termed Tropical Tidecraft was held at the Velgala Mount Lavinia beach yesterday. This Green Life project was organised by the Intra-Club of Stafford International School, Colombo, along with Vanarana, an environmental conservation organisation. Many students, teachers and other volunteers took part in this project.
Our beach is getting dirty and there's a lot of trash that's put everywhere. People are not taking care of it. But as the faces of the future, we're here to make a change.
Under this project, 50 Barringtonia asiatica plants, commonly known as Mudilla, which is a plant that prevents coastal erosion, were planted on the beaches of Velgala and Mount Lavinia.
Following the July coup that overthrew democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum, French President Emmanuel Macron says that his country will withdraw its ambassador and the troops from Niger.
Macron added that military cooperation was, quote, over and that 1,500 French troops stationed in the country would withdraw in, quote, the months and weeks to come, unquote, with a full pullout by the end of the year. France's exit comes after weeks of pressure from the military and popular demonstrations. Thousands of people have protested in recent weeks in the capital Niamey, including outside a military base housing French soldiers. The military junta, which seized power in Niger in July, welcomed the move. Niger's military rulers responded swiftly in a statement read out on national television.
Sri Lanka women won the silver medal in the Asian Games women's cricket competition held in China.
This is also Sri Lanka's first ever medal at the 2023 edition of the Asian Games.
India and Sri Lanka met in the final of the Asian Games 2023 women's cricket competition at Pingfeng Campus Cricket Field. India's returning captain Harmanpreet Kaur called it right at the toss and elected to bat first. Sri Lanka were able to eke out an early wicket in the form of Shafali Verma, but thereafter Smriti Mandhana with 46 and Jemima Rodriguez with 42 stitched a solid 73-run partnership to lift their side. India started towards the end, courtesy of some disciplined Sri Lanka bowling, but managed to reach 116 for 7. Uddeshika Prabodhini, Sugantika Kumari and Inoka Ranavira picked up 2 wickets each for Sri Lanka women. In response, Sri Lanka were rattled by a sharp spell from the young Tita Sadhu. The pacer took 3 top-order wickets in the power play, including that of the dangerous Chamari Athapattu.
So Team India end up with 116 for 7 in their allotted 20 overs.
The Sri Lanka middle order raised hopes by putting up a fight in the middle overs, but India's spinners kept the scoring rate in control and took wickets at crucial intervals. Sri Lanka finished 97 for 8, falling short by a 20-run margin. Hasini Pereira was a top scorer for Sri Lanka with a 25. India won the gold medal after defeating Sri Lanka by 19 runs in the Women's T20I final of the 19th Asian Games at Hangzhou, China. Sri Lanka women last won an Asian Games medal in 2014 in Incheon. With the silver medal at the 19th edition of the Asian Games, Sri Lanka moved to 16th place. China leads the medal table with 50 medals, including 32 gold. South Korea and Japan are placed 2nd and 3rd respectively.
And with that, we wrap up Primetime News for tonight.
Take care and good night.